Hello, this is Mike, the artist behind Michael S. Bell Fine Art, and welcome to my studio. Today I'm starting off using the brush and pencil powder blender to lay down a smooth foundation for the colored pencils I'll be using. While using a flat brush, I will cover the area I intend to start with a very light layer to prepare for the Polychromos colored pencils I'll be using. I'll speed things up a bit so you can watch into the next section. Enjoy! Here, I'm going to start laying down the first layers of the oil-based Polychromos pencils. I'll start working in a very rough side-to-side and circular motion or glazing style to get my values where I need them in the background. I'm not giving much attention to fill or blending as I would on a different type of paper, as we will do later in this piece. I will speed this up so you can watch the layering take place. Welcome back. Let's get started blending out the first layers using the brush and pencil powdered blender. Using a combination of a flat brush, a blending stump, and of course my finger, I'm going to start working the colored pencil down into the tooth of the sanded paper. You will see that it does push the pencil around a little, and that is totally normal on the first couple of layers. Don't get discouraged, as this will all work together later on in the piece. Now we're going to start really beginning to think about our shapes and values. Beginning the second layer, I work on defining certain shapes in the darker values, then working my way back to the lighter areas. I continue working like this to really start defining my shapes. This is where you start paying attention to how your work will look farther into the project. Again, I'll speed this up so you may watch the layering come together. spraying the first of many light mistings of the texture fixative to assure the initial layers are set. I'll wait 15 minutes before I start again to allow for recommended drying time. Going back to working on my layering, I start defining the shapes of the blurred background. One of the many benefits to using brush and pencil products is the ability to work many layers over each other by using the texture fixative to lock down a group of layers. I'm working in the lighter values before moving on to darker values. I'll use the powder blender and a soft tool to smooth out each section. I'll speed things up again so you can watch or follow along. Now that I'm getting closer to the final background, I'll give it another light misting of the texture fixative to be able to add the final touches before moving on to the Bumblebee. A few minor color adjustments and then adding in the lightest values that I always save for last. I'll let this play through a bit, so enjoy. Here is where the fun begins. Using the black Polychromos, we can start working in the darker values to this little bee. I need to get the basic shapes of the darker areas first so that I can come back in with the brighter colors shortly. It's not too important to get the exact shapes, as we want this piece to have that soft, fuzzy feel of a bee. Using the brush and pencil powder blender and a small liner brush, we can start smoothing out the black. This will not completely blend in the black, as with any of the darker colors, it takes quite a few layers to really get the area dark versus the lighter areas due to working on a lighter paper. I use various tools to push the black down into the tooth of the sanded paper. Once again, I'll speed up the process so you can see how adding the powdered blender makes a difference when adding more black. Welcome back. Starting by using some warm yellows, we can start moving into the color of the Bumblebee. Working between the warmer colors and the powder blender, I'll get a good base down to work from before adding more layers. You may see me using various tools to blend with throughout this project. I'm doing this to see what works best for the specific areas. Once again, I'll speed this up a little so you can follow along. Now that we have a good base to work from, I'll go back in to change the tones and values of specific areas. I'll continue working these areas until I'm satisfied with how they look, and then prepare for the bright white highlights and laying down a coat of texture fixative. I almost always work this way by laying down the values I want, then adjusting them as I go. Not all artists work this way, but this is what works for me, and by using the brush and pencil products I can do this. I'll be back shortly. Welcome back once again. Using a trick I learned, I'm laying down a base of the titanium white before putting down my colors. This helps to soften them right from the start and also aids in the blending later on. I found that keeping a bright white underneath makes a huge difference when it comes to blending later in the layers. I'm using a small liner brush to keep the titanium white exactly where I want. I'll speed this up. Enjoy. Now that we have the titanium white down, we can start adding in the colors. Using a variation of blues and purples, I'll work back and forth putting down the colors, blending out with a powdered blender, and adding more color. This is a process I use that works for me. Don't be afraid to experiment with your colors, as having put down the white first, you can come back in with your eraser and lightly lift off the color if you don't like it. As before, I'll speed this up so we can work forward through the project. Welcome back. This narration is going to be just a little bit different because I want to talk you through this step by step. Using the touch-up texture and some titanium white from brush and pencil, what I'm doing is I'm just making up almost like a paint consistency of this, almost like milk, about that consistency, or maybe a little bit thinner than melted ice cream. And how I do this is I take a clean liner brush and pick up just a little bit of the titanium white. And what I'm using here is a clean pan pastel lid that I had laying around. Just pick up the titanium white, put a little bit of powder in there, and then a little bit of the touch-up texture, and mix it up. What I'm doing is keeping these areas that I want super white, getting these laid in now, so then that way once they're dry, if I need to, I can go back in and tone them accordingly. I can also use this to go in and add the little reflections, little highlights, anywhere that I want to either have a bright white or an area that I can go back and glaze over. You'll see me using my finger a few times, and all I'm doing is laying it down and then just put my finger on it, and it kind of pulls up some of that and allows it to be a little more transparent. So I'll use this little liner brush, go through the process, and then I'll speed this up for you to follow along. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the comments section and I will answer them accordingly, and if possible, I will leave you a response for sure. Thank you. I will start working on the inside of the flower with some variations of light purples, magentas, and violets for the base. There is no need to get the colors exact because we will be going back into these areas and adjusting like we did earlier on the Bumblebee. I like to always get a base color down before focusing on the exact colors needed. We can use the powdered blender and our soft tools to smooth areas out before laying down more colors and getting closer to the exact color needed. Now that we have our base layers down, we can use the texture fixative to lay down a light mist, waiting about 15 minutes for it to dry, so then we can start working more layers. Going back to the Bumblebee to start working in tonal value changes now. We have put down a layer of the texture fixative, 2 of them, over the bee, so this gives us back the tooth to start layering and glazing areas that I felt needed to be adjusted. I'll work through the bee, adjusting as I go, to closely match the reference image if possible. I don't want my work to be a photocopy of the image, just my rendition of what works for me. You'll see these soft tools used throughout the artwork, and these work best when it comes to blending out the colored pencil with a powdered blender. As always, I'll put all the information below in the description of what I used. I won't be listing individual colors this time because you may feel like using different colors. Welcome back. Again, laying down a light mist of the texture fixative to lock down the layers I have so far. Again, be sure to wait at least 15 minutes for the fixative to dry before you continue on. Let's start working on the base of the flower now. Working the colors of pinks, magentas, purples, and even the greens, we can start building up our colors. Going back and forth between the powdered blender and the colors like I've done earlier using the soft tools to smooth everything out. Having the color underneath locked down by the fixative means they won't move at all now when blending over them. You can blend either into a solid color or more transparent as needed. Now that we reached the point, we can go back in again with our touch-up texture and titanium white mixture. Again, we'll have to mix new because it dries out very quickly. We'll go back in and highlight the petals, any other areas that we feel really need to be accentuated with a bright white. We'll do this throughout the petals and any other areas that you find that you would like to keep completely white or very vibrant white. I'll speed this up. Enjoy. It's time to really start focusing on the flower and the stem. Going back and adjusting as you see fit, get the petals just how you like them. Using a combination of everything we've learned and used earlier, we can start really defining each petal. Remember, don't be afraid to experiment. You won't know if you like it unless you try. Continue on adjusting the values and the tones as you go. I'd like to say thank you for watching, and please don't forget, if you liked the video, give it a huge thumbs up and click the subscribe button. If you'd like to be notified every time I upload a new video, be sure to check the little bell. As always, many thanks, and be sure to share any of my videos.